Good evening. Thank you so much for coming to the Sashiko Live Streaming Thursday night. This is Atsushi, and this is the Sashiko Live Streaming where I stitch Sashiko while talking about Sashiko stories. This is not a lecture, this is not a webinar, this is not a tutorial, so I can talk about stories, but I will not be able to answer the questions for the technical question. Let me check everything is good. Okay, I think everything is good. Let me check my audio. Good. Whew. Oh, so one announcement. One announcement, which is I will be going to the New York area tomorrow, and then I have a workshop workshop over this weekend, Saturday in Dumbo, and Sunday Upper East New York. I believe that the workshop is already filled, but at the same time, you can check it, and there's a trunk, not a trunk sale, it's more like a pop-up store right after the workshop. It's going to be 4:30 to 6 o'clock. I share the details on this live's description. I have the workshop in California, but before that, there should be a link to the. I think there's a link. I will make sure to put the link there. But there's gonna be a pop-up store, so you can stop by and then you can say hello to me. You can touch samples. So if you like to see what is it like, please stop by. The Loop of the Loom is the place to go. Loop of the Loom. I hope you can stop by between 4:30 to 6, and I'll be, of course, be there too. Okay, that being said, let's start stitching. Oh, Lily-san, arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you so much for coming, Lily-san. Thank you. All right, I will switch the camera and. Whew. Whew. Little break though. I will drink a bit of pop. So it's not a beer, so. Hello. It sounds like a beer, but it's always the pop, not the beer. I don't drink while I stitch, which I kind of recommend. Stitch and drinking is not really a bad idea. I used to do a lot, so if you would like to enjoy the moment, some people may be upset that I'm not being serious about Sashiko, but don't worry about that type of seriousness. And you can, of course, drink, you can do anything while doing Sashiko. It's up to you. That serious is probably today's key word that I brought. And just a second, okay? Some people might find me too serious about Sashiko. Why is he talking about that much? It's just a simple hand stitching, it's just craft. Why is he, that serious about one specific thing? And it is very true that it's just it's just the hand stitching, so it seems like there's nothing to sort of be serious about. Like, what am I fighting for? But at the same time, there are reasons that I have to be serious. And I believe that I've been sharing those stories, but they are still not still, but they are. That's the majority. So they're publishing books. They are, teaching without acknowledging it. I guess that's the word. Acknowledging it. They try to ignore what I say on purpose. And that's something I really have to fight back because they are minimizing the seriousness I have. And it might be difficult. It might be, you might not understand. Well, you who are listening to this live streaming probably will understand or do understand, already understood why I'm serious. But I have to keep, not have to, I want to keep sharing so that the voice will be left. I don't want to see legacy, but something to leave behind. I got a comment from the person I got a comment on the Instagram saying that she is half Japanese and half American, I think. An American father and Japanese mother, and she's looking forward to learn something Japanese. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. It is very difficult to understand it, but I don't want them to give up learning that. And it's quite difficult because there's a big difference between the language, and I don't want them to left alone. I don't want to leave them behind because they are Japanese too, and anybody can understand the culture too. So I just want us to be more careful about those things. Kernel Panic, I'm glad you're serious about it. If you were not serious about it, all we would have is Japanese embroidery technique. Yes, very true. And technique itself is very important part of Sashiko, but I do have a little bit of sort of a question toward today's trend. And of course, I mean, I do have a lot of questions about it. But do we celebrate this culture? Do we celebrate? I heard some word that we celebrate Sashiko. Let's celebrate like upcycling with Sashiko technique. And that phrase itself is not really wrong per se. There are some statements which is completely wrong. For example, some book, actually a book, says that let's embrace the imperfection. That's completely wrong. It's almost opposite side of Sashiko. So that is something that I cannot say it's not wrong. But let's celebrate Sashiko can be right at the same time. Without thinking, without knowing about stories, it can be very shallow. And that's kind of sad. Celebrate. Appreciate is one way. Celebrate. And it's not really for only Japanese people. We all had it. We means like not you or I who lives in 2022. Our grandparents or even great parents, even before that. Unless you were like a royal family or aristocratic people, we all had those moments, and that's something we don't want to forget and we don't want to forget. I'm a knitter. A manager of a yarn store near my house said, "Don't knit if you drink. Don't drink if you knit." Oops. That's like a drive. Don't drive if you don't drink. Don't drink if you drive. Well, knitting, I don't do the knitting, but you have to kind of count in knitting, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. If there's any counting, probably drinking is a bad idea. Yeah, I don't think I can count and stitch and drink together. I don't count in the Sashiko. There's Sashiko which requires counting, but I don't do it because I think I would like to keep myself out of those tidiness. This is very important word, and if you don't obey it, they will always regret it in the morning. Sashiko is probably opposite. You will enjoy the result if you're drunk. Try. Actually, please try it. It's actually not a bad idea. The stories, the history, the culture, your own family's place in this. Thank you for all that. What I find so interesting though is that you are sharing a process you are going through as you. I wasn't planning. I was really not planning to do this. It's it's extremely outside of comfort. It is extremely outside of my comfort zone. I was not proud of myself doing Sashiko stitching. And I still, how can I put it this way? I still admire those professional people, like doctor, lawyer. My wife is a psychologist, PhD, engineer, IT. I myself studied a lot in college, English. I did not study much. I kept drinking. Today's a drinking day. I kept studying. Well, but thank you so much for the party. I can't speak English right now. Well, anyway, I still believe that Sashiko is. I don't want to create any misunderstanding, but kind of less work for that. Technically speaking, I can teach everything in like if one person comes to my place, if she or he gives me 5 days, 9 to 5, I think I can give them everything. That's how ordinary it is. That's very, very, very ordinary it is. So I kind of disrespected Sashiko by myself when I was younger, especially when I was 20s. Um, I, I used to say this strong word, I'm too smart to do Sashiko. That was so horrible word to say it, but I was thinking like that, and I was even saying that to many people. Like, why do I have to? Like, I have a better place to be, which is completely wrong, was wrong. But back then I was thinking like that, and I still believe that Sashiko is very ordinary, not a professional work, but it does not mean that it's shallow. It is easier. It is much, much easier to get it right. You cannot get it. One cannot get a medical license or get it right in medicine by a year or so. You have to go through a lot of things. But a year is good enough for Sashiko. I wouldn't call them master. Nobody can be a master that easily. But sufficient. Anybody can reach to sufficient. And the reason I keep saying that is there are already so many people that I respect, I admire from the people I taught. Like Nana is a good example, if you know her. And it's not only Japanese, many non-Japanese people are getting so good at it. So it is not really something I was proud of, and I am speaking out, not speaking up because of the one instant, like literally one instant in May 2019, if anybody remember that. And without that week, I wouldn't be speaking out this much. I was trying to share but more like superficial level for that. That's the time I realized how culture can be filtered. Somebody told me the word cultural appropriation back then, and I'm still learning what cultural appropriation is. But appropriation is a little bit different from what I'm kind of observing. What I'm observing is more like a filtration or slimming it, getting rid of something important, and cherry picking. That's probably the word for that. Cherry picking, strawberry picking, was it? Something picking, some fruit picking, and that is not gonna do good. Sorry, carnal panic. Sorry, I missed the comment. Defining sorry. The I am, you are, I am. Azu is sharing a process of I am going through as I go through it, defining, examining, defining Sashiko in the culture you came from and the different the culture you teach in outside of you. Yes, it is very much outside of my comfort zone. That's why I don't want to be called teacher, sensei. I don't reject, and I don't get upset by those who call me sensei, but it's a little bit weird. You can call me like that, but I do not force anybody to. There are some people who get upset if they are not called sensei or teacher. I'm not that, and Azu or Atsushi friendly is more ideal for that, because I don't really. This is a big word, but I don't think there's so much teaching in Sashiko. I teach, but more like teaching is the way to make the learning more efficient, which means that one usually have to go through many years of practice to get through something important. And I would like to offer the mindset and also technique so that they can go through the those experience a little easier, and for that matter, surely. And the reason I say surely is that if they don't know the form or story or mindset behind it, they might just give up. For example, how to use the thimble is one thing, and if one cannot do that, they might give up. And after that, they might start saying that, well, Sashiko doesn't need a thimble. And it is true, Sashiko doesn't need a thimble. You don't have to use the thimble for Sashiko. But at the same time, there's a big difference between I don't use it because I choose not to versus Sashiko doesn't require a thimble. I don't use it because I can't. There's a big difference, and I don't want anybody here to go through that can't way. If you choose to not to use it, that's perfectly fine, but that should be after you learn how to use it. Well, especially if you're teaching. If you're just playing, stitching for yourself, don't worry about any of those things. But if you're teaching Sashiko on behalf of Japanese, I think that's kind of minimum baseline. What would you be doing if not this? That's a very good question. I would be stitching without being on live. And I would be focusing on my house chore. So 2013, like it's gonna be a little long story, but 2013, one event happened and our family split it. My mother decided to stop practicing Sashiko, and I was kind of tired of every those dramas, and I decided to immigrate to the US. And because my wife is a full-time worker and as immigrant, both of us are immigrant. In order to have a child, it was quite important for us, one of us, to be stay-at-home father or mother. Otherwise, it was not, like, we don't have parent or relatives to depend on around. So if something happens, one of us have to be the one who take care. And if one is the responsible full-time worker, the other is more like has to be flexible more. And I was like that for the first 3 years, but at some point my mother started saying that she liked to restart doing Sashiko. That was only a few months that she stopped doing that. But in order to make things, we have to spend some money. Like fabric is not cheap, thread is not cheap. At the same time, thread manufacturers are kind of going down, so we wanted to make sure that they can have enough sales to go through. So in order to continue, not even grow, continue, we had to involve some economical activities. And that's how I started, not I, that's how we started the project so-called Sashi.co, if you remember that for the first one. And that was purely the first motivation to start this sort of stitching or even selling those Sashiko supply was to encourage my mother to keep stitching. I think she's genius. She's genius in Sashiko, and I wanted her to keep stitching. But I was not stitching in front of the camera. And there was a one group, like an Indigo Dye group in New York, who invited me to teach Sashiko in New York, and I was not sure what to teach, to be honest, because everything what I do, I thought that was ordinary things, so nobody wanted to, like how to microwave kind of thing. Well, everybody knows how to use microwave. But I had a workshop there. It was 3 hours, which is half length from now. It was a great success. I learned what they wanted to learn. At the same time, I started realizing my ability to teach was not that great. I mean, I was not 100% sure what I was teaching. And after, yes, then, well, because it was a great success, we started having more workshops to generate sales for the studio, for me, for everybody around. Then one day, there was the week that there were not enough students to have the workshop profitably. How do you call it? Like above the profit, you have to have like certain numbers of people. And there was the week that we couldn't get enough students for that. And they asked me to advertise the workshop on my platform as well. That's the first time I used YouTube to broadcast my stitching. Yes. Then starting Instagram, YouTube Live, but mainly for the first few years, I was only doing it in Japanese because I was doing it for fun, purely for fun. There was no message behind it. I was mending my underwear on screen, which is not probably ideal. I was doing a lot of, crazy things for that matter. I was not just stitching, which probably I should redo it more often, but I don't want to surprise the other people. But I was doing live streaming a lot because that was the time that I realized I could have fun with stitching over the internet. But there were no messages back then. And then then May 2019, there were a big discussion, and I don't want to go through that. You can come to my link and You can read a whole story about that. But then I started realizing how different Sashiko has become in English. And that's the beginning of the story. So I may have been doing the live streaming, but probably not in English. Probably not with this kind of message. I was more open. I was more easygoing for that matter. I'm very easygoing in Japanese too. Some Japanese think that I should be more strict, but in Japanese I'm very easygoing. Like I don't say whatever, but I say very close to whatever. So that's because I can be extremely easygoing in Japanese language because we share the same expectation. I don't have to be strict to uh, expect something without even telling them. I don't have to scream at somebody to take off shoes because all Japanese take off shoes when they come into my house, no matter what. There's no case that they don't take off shoes. So I don't have to scream in the entrance saying, please take off shoes. I mean, let's say that you're in Japan, you don't know anything about Japanese culture. It's okay to make a mistake. You can, of course, come into our house with shoes on, but I might say, like, please take off the shoes. And there's no choice there. You have to take it off because that's the rule, that's the expectation. Of course, you can make a mistake. You can leave the house if that's the choice. You can learn, of course. You didn't know that, so you can learn. You can make a mistake. Uh, Same as Sashiko, you can make a mistake. You don't have the not knowing is not the problem. The problem started when the guests start shouting their freedom to not to take their shoes off in my house, in our house, the Japanese house in Japan. That's a little bit too much, and that's why when I have a guest, when I hang out with the Japanese people, I don't really have to be strict. But when I am inviting the non-Japanese friend, I tend to be more strict just in case. If everybody's as nice as people here right now, I wouldn't be like this. But unfortunately, that's not the case. It is very rare. It's actually opposite. 80% of the people are, I don't want to say 80, but before it was 90% of the people more hostile to. They think that I'm destroying their freedom with asking the questions for the answers, which I don't really understand. Anyway, that's how I am strict. That's how I started sharing the stories. This is gonna lead us to talk about how serious. Uh, why am I so serious in sharing such stories? It is because it is my personal story, because it is more my family stories, and it's more personal for me, and therefore it's important, it's more serious. It is true, but there are one layer on top of that, which is um, speaking up not only on behalf of myself or my family, speaking on behalf of the Japanese who probably stitched for their survival. They had to stitch. They did not have a choice to not to stitch. And we have to really imagine how horrible it is. I mean, either you like it or not, you have to stitch. Otherwise, somebody might die tomorrow. Do we don't think I don't think we can understand that seriousness to life or even death for that matter. But at least we should imagine how scary that could be. At the same time, it is our value to say that it's scary. They might have accepted those things as the part of their life. The death is always next door or in front of the door. But those fear, actually hope, not a fear to death, more like a hope that they can live another day, is foundation of this part of stitching. And it's called Sashiko because it was done in Japanese in Japan. But this type of stitching were available, not available, and those type of stitching were done in many countries, nations, and communities. They just don't have the name for that. And they probably have done that quite many years ago, so we or you forget about it. Sashiko, because of the Japanese unique culture, happened to be still there. It's very rare, and I'm probably the last generation for that to learn from somebody who actually saw somebody stitching for their survival. So my grandmother's generation did not stitch for survival, but my grandma's generation saw somebody stitching for their survival. My daughter's generation cannot listen to any of those because their grandmother, my mother, did not see those people who had to stitch. So it's like a first resource or second resource. Of course, the first resource is better than second resource, but it cannot be the third resources for that matter. I mean, it can be, but at the same time, it's less credential. So that's why I don't want to hear the word whatever. Although I say whatever in Japanese, but I don't want to hear that in English because that takes the responsibility to imagine how it would be. Oh, let's have fun with Sashiko. It's just stitching. We can use the word so we can get more attention and let's enjoy Sashiko and appreciate Sashiko. You can use whatever thread, you can do whatever you want. It's just hand stitching. Is true statement. It's not a wrong statement. But it does not explain the whole. And that whole include those fears and hope for the next day. And in order to share those stories, I cannot joke. I mean, I love joke. I would like to be able to make you laugh. I don't know how, but I enjoy the stand-up comedy and stuff. But I cannot just take it easy on that. As the result, I look like I'm very serious, and I mean, it's good to be serious. But we cannot go back to that age. I don't want to, but we don't want to go back to those stone age where you have to mend fabric for your life. That's scary. I don't want to go back there, but it is our responsibility to imagine that how different it could be. Aloha. Thank you. That goes to the word poor and poverty. There are still probably common definition of Sashiko as stitching in the poor, stitching done by poor people in poverty. I stopped using that phrase a few years ago because that definition of poor is quite subjective. It is poor from our perspective, our definition, but it might not be poor in their definition. So I stopped saying that. And that's because of the teacher I learned. Sorry. That I'm doing the workshop for her, not for her, with her studio in California later this month. But then we started calling the Sashiko. She's doing the PhD in Boro right now. She advised me to call it Sashiko stitching in the extreme condition environment with limited resources. And that's probably how I would like us to keep the responsibility, or even I don't want to say obligation, but it's very much close to the obligation. Like it's kind of both, something in between the responsibility and obligation. If somebody say that they respect it, they have to really imagine that. Welcome back, Lily-san. I mean, it's very simple stitching. There's nothing so special about it. But there are something special to you, probably, because of the difference. Because we don't share the same expectation. And for the Japanese people, this is probably not so special. And although I teach Sashiko in Japanese as well, and they are happy about it, but that's probably because they didn't have a chance to learn from their grandparents or, from the community. But yeah, I often use this analogy, but it's like me teaching about Thanksgiving without speaking English, or talking about Independence Day, how great Independence Day in Japanese without reading anything about Independence Day in English. That's a bit off the limit, right? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I missed the last week because sadly my cat got sick and passed away. I'm sorry to hear that. Oh my. That's not. That's very sad. Sakura is here. So the death in English. My daughter goes to the American public schools, so there was a person who passed away in her school, and there was a note running around how to talk about death to your child. We kind of talk about. I talked to my daughter about death. Frankly, I don't really teach her that death is something to avoid. But in English, probably using the word death itself is not ideal. Therefore, there's a word for the passed away. We don't say, died or something like that. But I don't know about the other culture, but Japanese really believed the spirit. I don't. Just a second. If I start talking about this, it's gonna be extremely long. Okay, let me think how I can put it in the another 30 minutes. The Japanese culture is very effed up, messed up, because there are two completely different view of life and death in two completely different religions, Buddhism and Shintoism. And both believe that in order to talk those two religions, we kind of have to talk about the view of life. And interestingly, they coexist simultaneously. We are the people who goes to shrine to celebrate the New Year's Day, on the way back from the shrine, we stopped by temple to enjoy those, what do you call those, bell? We ring the 108 bells in the New Year's Day. So that's two religion celebrating in one day. And we eat KFC the Christmas to celebrate Christmas, or Carnal Sundays. I don't know what we're celebrating, but we are very much. I'm not proud of this, but we're very interesting people. And each people have a different view, of course, but those individual views are kind of suppressed, or at least was suppressed in the past. And Sashiko was this, Sashiko is the practice in the past for that purpose. Sashiko is still alive, but mainly it was done in the past by those who believe in that. Sorry, I will think about it, how to explain that, because if I start explaining without any script, without any note, I will have to stop stitching right now, so I'll come back with this topic later on. But that's how serious I am. I would like to make a joke as much as possible. I love joke, but there are something that we cannot make a joke out of. And there are something we have to respect. This might be an interesting question. Remember the Oscar this year? Oscar, right? Like red carpet Oscar. I forgot the comedian's name, but there was a comedian, and Will Smith slapped his face, and that became a big news. And now he is banned from that ceremony for 10 years or so. That's my understanding. It might be wrong. But when that happened, many Japanese people reacted that that was heroic action, while many American people, Western people in English, they were accusing his action of violent. So there were two complete, like one is supporting him, one is kind of accusing him. That's based on the view, and that's based on the expectation. There's no such a thing as right answer for that. But it happened in the US, it happened in the US culture, it happened in the US expectation, American expectation. I think what they did to the Will Smith is understandable, but if that happened in Japan, it might have been different. So there's something we can make fun of it, but sometimes there's something more sacred, more protected, respected area, and that can be defined by the expectation. And right now I feel like somebody's not making fun of it, more like taking it too easy without knowing or without even thinking about that boundary. So seriousness can be sometimes considered as the bad thing in this culture, but smile, positive thinking, you gotta be positive, you should smile all the time, you should be nice. I mean, niceness is the key to be successful in the US, isn't it? I might be wrong, but you have to be nice. Nice is very important, and I'm learning that. It's really difficult. Everybody's trying to be nice. I know they are, complaining behind your back, but they have to be nice to their face, each other. So being serious, being angry with being like super serious face is kind of like the last thing one can do, like ultimatum kind of thing. That's why I think many people find me angry person. I get a lot of criticism like he's so angry all the time. No, I'm not angry. I'm just serious. I'm not just joking about. I'm not just taking it easy about it. When I'm angry, I tell that I am angry, which was in 2019 May again. I was angry back then. Now I'm not angry. I'm just trying to be serious. But that's the difference expectation. And again, if this is happening in the US in English, that's, I'm the one who has to adjust myself. And that's what I'm doing right now for my daughter's thing. But since this is the Japanese word, I happen to be able to speak English, so I'm trying to translate as much as I can. But it is the Japanese word, and the main core of the foundation of this practice was done by Japanese. So we have to really follow that for at least for the first time, or at least for the beginning. We have to follow that. Then we can change. Then you can do whatever you want for that matter. You have to learn the basic, you have to learn the original so that you can change. You cannot just change without learning the basic or original. That's not a change, that's the violence. Lily, that's so complicated because there's a whole underlying ways of being nice and super not nice at the same time, and it's terrible to be the target of that. So that's that's connected to the word passive aggressive, which I still don't really 100% understand it. I do know, I think I understand it, but I don't think I can explain that in Japanese. I think I can explain that in English, but sincere. Huh. Helen, that's a good way to say that, sincere. So serious has a little negative feeling, right? Sincere. Maybe. I'll look into that. But I have to, I will fight. Not a fight. I will hustle if I have to make this happen. Kathy, you have to be nice to get along, but to be really high level, seriously successful, you have to ditch the niceness. That's a really good point. Like, seriously successful. I don't know that level. Seriously successful. Probably the level of the seriously successful is probably different, but I don't know how. I think I know no one around me who ditched that niceness. Everybody's nice. I mean, I don't hang out with many people, but everybody I hang out with is quite nice. Sincere, maybe. I'll think about it. That's a very good suggestion. Thank you. There's a different niceness requirement if you're in a minority too. See, it gets so complicated. It's so, I mean, too much to learn, to be honest. Jeff Bezos level successful is that's a bit sky moon kind of thing. But I understand. I understand. If that's the level of the niceness, it's completely different story. I guess. I thought Lily-san, I thought that I didn't like violence, but I understand what he had protect his wife, and I hate jokes like sell to others. Yes, So I completely agree with Lily-san for this. I do not like a joke insulting others, but at the same time, that's the kind of American comedy culture. And Will Smith is from there. That's the key. If that was Japanese, then this might have like if like for example, if that was Ken Watanabe after Last Samurai, we would have expected to protect his dignity by doing something. Like haha, like being nice and laughing is really not the way he could play a role. Of course, it's a role, so it's a different story. But that's how different. I'm not saying which is right or wrong. I'm just saying that there's so much difference, and I cannot just understand one can say whatever or take it easy without knowing that about that culture. That's don't you think that's strange? Japanese people being nice is true, but that's a whole other level. Like, we're not that nice to each other when we become friends, as long as I know. We have to be nice even among friends and co-workers. We will be extremely nice to the following people. If I have to kind of ditch that guest from my boundaries, we try to be as polite as possible. But once we know that you're inside of circle, forget about politeness. Forget about that niceness. One can be. So I don't really know the nice Sashiko stitchers or nice Sashiko artisans because everybody was quite, in a good way, quite mean. Some of them are disgusting, nasty way too. Not nice. They are genius in Sashiko, but they were not, the nicest person. I get told off that all the time for not being polite enough when I'm matching politeness of others, and the reason is an autistic person. I have less social capital than those around me. Yes, so it's of course it depends on the. I don't want to even call it disability. I'm sorry, I just don't know. My wife is the psychologist, so I should know about that, but I don't think that's called disability. It might be disability, but difference. And this whole society is designed to be nice, I guess. As the result, we got into the loophole. Like, question. It's really, really question. So I am in the several social media groups and sharing Sashiko photos and stuff like that. And almost I don't check all the posts, and I don't check. I don't think I check. I take very, very few photos, but last 5 years, 4 years, there are so many photos about Sashiko posted online, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. I don't remember any comments saying, "Wow, that's nasty," or "That's disgusting," or "That's horrible." Look, the reply to those photos are always, "Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so nice. That's so inspirational." It's always positive, and that's because of this niceness culture. I mean, if you think that it's beautiful, that's perfectly fine. I'm not doubting their, sense of art or sense of beauty, but some of them are. So in that case, the being quiet, not saying is probably the answer, right? Because that's the sort of the expectation each other. You shouldn't say, you should be nice to each other. But that's not always the case. I mean, please be nice, but that's not the case at some point in some culture. I'm not saying you should not be nice, but that's how I feel. Like, it is okay to be fake nice, but it's not okay to be honest, serious, or honest and sincere. That's a very interesting difference. Whew. I cannot believe that I've been talking for another hour. If you're watching this as the archive, please leave the comment if you have any questions about Sashiko story. I am happy to talk about Sashiko story, which means like cultural topic or something about Sashiko. And I don't do the technical things because I will do those technical things in online class or in workshop. Of course, you can learn from these videos, but I don't really do the instruction because I believe that not believe I would like to give my personal attention to each people for that. So I will stitch one more thread and that's gonna be the end of this live streaming today. So if you have any topic you want me to cover, please let me know. I will be in New York tomorrow, so I hope I can take as many photos as possible. I don't think I will do live streaming tomorrow, but I used to do live streaming from a workshop. I will not do that, but if you say something nasty online, you'll be accused of bullying or trolling and get removed from the group. It's the new normal. Huh. So being honest, so you have to be nice. That's kind of like a new rule, like group guideline. Oops. Yeah, I've seen the group guideline actually too. There was a group guideline, a group rule saying that you have to be nice. Like, oh, okay, of course we will be nice, but nice and honest can be, can happen together. But that makes sense. That makes sense, and that's not confusing, to be honest. I mean, it is confusing if I have to do that. If I am in charge of doing that, if I have to choose, if I have to pick which comment I'm expecting to do it, it's kind of confusing. But as the phenomena or as the result, as the outcome of that movement, I understand it's not confusing. Regardless, regardless. Oy vey, I'm sorry. It's an extension of the politically correct movement. So difficult. Like, I thought that learning English will solve all of the problems that I was not sure what to expect when I was in college. The more I learn, the less I understand. This culture is so interesting. I mean, Japanese are interesting too, but this is, I guess, if you can't say something nice, then don't say it. See, that's the thing, kind of minimizing. Of course, of course, of course, of course, of course, we shouldn't say something nasty or mean on purpose for the purpose of making somebody, depressed or hurt. But, well, but being honest and being nasty can happen simultaneously too. So, yeah, that's because of the internet. If my friends told me you look like shit, that's okay to me. But if I receive that comment, that might be a little bit different story. Like, it isn't over politically correct to use the language group or prefer when referring to those groups. I don't know. I'm not sure if I understand what politically correct. I have to Google that. I think I've read it somewhere, but I am not 100% sure I'm understanding the word. Politically correct. I will read some article book about it. Thank you, Lily-san. I will. Well, yeah. I don't like driving in New York. This time I don't have to drive in New York because the organizer will pick me up from the place I will be staying in New Jersey. So it's gonna be difficult, but not the inside of the New York. It's impossible. I mean, not impossible, but it's extremely expensive to get a place to stay in New York City. I mean, of course, there should be a place which is relatively cheap, but it's a bit too much. I mean, it's not a bit too much. It's more like I don't know why I'm going there. I mean, of course, teaching Sashiko is a important mission, but at the same time, it's my work. I would like to make my ends meet. If I were to, anyway, sorry. Um, and then they all turn around and say, your own preferred word aren't politically correct. When the politically correct words are actually super rude to us, like hearing impaired is the politically correct term, but it's very rude and deaf people were referred to as a whole preferred. Woohoo! I will read that again when my brains are awake. Is there any like easy book that I can enjoy reading it? I mean, the Dr. DeAngelo's book, White Fragility, and also Nice Racism. I read them and I think I understood. I mean, it's not written for Asian. It is not written for Asian who just immigrated from Japan. I mean, of course, American-born Asian can understand that language, but I understood probably, but it didn't sink in that way. I am not sure if I understood it right or not. So I really have to keep learning this concept. Oh, and for us autistic, it's politically correct to say we have autism, but it's rude to we are autistic. Um, I have to be careful. We have to be very correct. We have to be very careful about that too. And that's probably the political correctness. And because we kind of give up to imagine those cases, there's kind of like we ask for the rules, easy rules to follow, to not to think, right? Like thinking is kind of different. Thinking is difficult. Thinking takes a lot of energy. And we don't want to think if we have a choice to not to think. As the result, we try to get a rule, and that's politically correct is one sort of the expectation or rule to follow so that we don't have to think. But all the message I'm asking throughout Sashiko is to think. You don't have to think about each stitch's size. Instead, I want to think or even imagine the story, conversation, dialogue with the fabric, needle, and thread. I understand that New Jersey is south of New York. Yes, it can be south, but it can be just right west. Like there's a bridge and also tunnel. If you go through that, it's gonna be the New Jersey. Ellen, I don't even get it. Okay, if you say so, then that's okay. I can say I don't get it too. Okay, fine. Oh yay. I think I'm getting it, but I just, I'm not 100% sure. Politically correct is dumb. The words you choose don't matter as much as the intention behind them. Just try to be nice and don't worry about this specific word. I say and I believe that words matters. Words, for example, Sashiko is the word done by Japanese. So it is not okay for non-Japanese to modify the word just because the word sounds nice or word is in trend. At the same time, I understand that how to use the word in the same culture, in the same native language, it can be it can be too much. So words matter, but at the same time, as you wrote, intention behind it is also not also. It's actually much more important than that. And usually, those people who think the intention behind the word do not appropriate the word. They do have a lot of thinking behind it. It's really difficult conversation, difficult topic to discuss. This live streaming is becoming not related to Sashiko at all. I'm sorry. I sometimes go into this kind of loophole that I cannot get out. This is the Sashiko live streaming. You're talking about completely different thing, which explains how Sashiko is introduced right now. I am learning this because of Sashiko, so I hope you can be okay with that. Oops. I think the reason for this is that these words are not meant to be nice to us. They are to appear nice to the majority, so they feel like they are helping us when they're not. That's scary. That's scary. Well, that's probably that makes sense actually a little bit. I have a lot of, not a lot of, but I often receive the comment saying that, oh, I have a lot of Japanese friends, so my answer is not wrong. Well, good for you. You know, you have a lot of friends, Japanese friend. You've been in Japan, okay, fine. So what is? I gotta be nicer. Sorry, I'm getting so sleepy, so my words are not that great. So I don't wanna, I don't wanna, I don't wanna end the live streaming like this. But so just in case somebody who may be wondering what I'm doing, uh, probably if you were here last week, I was doing exactly the same thing. So, um, I probably didn't explain the whole stories behind it. Well, that is, this is not a whole story. There's an intention behind this. So I do not consider Sashiko as the art, right? I do not consider Sashiko as the art, fine art for that matter. That's Oh, I'm sorry. I checked the map. The range of New Jersey was wide.リリーさん、やっぱ一回ニューヨークおいで。You gotta come to New York one day. Well, I'm not there, so I cannot really help you, but we can hang out there too. Anyway, so I believe that Sashiko is not the art, and at least Sashiko is not the fine art. We have to define what art is before we even try to discuss about it. It's going to be, again, long story, and it's going to be long live streaming with a lot of reading and thinking. But I research. Not a research. I read some article. I read some books about art, and one of the things we have to have in the art is the message. Regardless how beautiful it looks, the message itself contained in the piece is quite important. So my message for the Sashiko is the result is secondary. The Sashiko in the English is focused on the outcome, how beautiful it is, how even stitches there are. It is pretty much, the end product is more important than anything, which is okay, but it's not a whole picture of Sashiko. So I would like to focus on the process, importance of the process, and for that I would like to share that the pattern doesn't actually matter too much. As long as the process exists there, the pattern itself is not the first thing to make it art, if that's the case. So I'm doing the same pattern, same stitching for 100 meters. 100 meters, same. And one day I will connect all of those together. So you'll see me stitching the same patterns over and over and over again. And another reason I'm choosing this is it's really easy for me. I can do it with probably close my eyes. I can do it. I'm sorry. I it's exaggeration. I have to follow the line, but at the same time, I can do it without thinking. It's more like autopilot. So it's very good for the live streaming because I can focus on speaking. All right. Sorry, Lily-san, I did not get a chance to read all of the comments. But I hope you have a good weekend. I will upload some of the photos on Instagram over the weekend with the workshop. And what else? Oh yeah, the Sashiko workshop in New York is this weekend. So one more time, sorry. Sashiko workshop in New York is this weekend, and then there will be a pop-up store right after the workshop, which is on at 4:30 to 6 o'clock p.m. evening. Please check the link for the actual place location. It's gonna be the Saturday in Dumbo, Sunday northeast Manhattan. And after that, I will go to this California, Berkeley, San Francisco, Berkeley area, July 23rd and 26th. As long as I know the workshop in 23rd is full, there might be the waiting list open. There's a space, a little bit of space on the 25th one. So if you could join the workshop there, that would be very appreciated. It's gonna be the first time that I offer spelling something. So that's my first time to offer. This is my first time to offer Sashiko workshop in California in the West Coast. So please consider that. I don't know when I can go next time. So I hope I can see you there. And thank you so much for the like button. But that'd be really helpful if you could push the like button to keep this channel health. All right. Thank you so much and have a good night. I will see you next Thursday, the same time. Bye bye.